I just finished reading through over 1,200 comments about Trump's Iowa rally, and I need to talk about what I found. Because something is happening in America right now that nobody seems to be acknowledging, and it's happening in real time, right in front of us. Let me paint you a picture. Donald Trump is standing in what looks like a conference room in Iowa. Not a massive arena, not a packed stadium, a conference room. And he is telling a crowd of maybe a few hundred people that inflation is solved, that grocery prices are down, that gas is cheaper than it's ever been, and that he has accomplished more in 1 year than any president in history. And behind him, there are people holding professionally made signs that say lower prices while every single American watching knows their grocery bill has doubled. Now here is what stopped me cold. I expected the comments to break down the usual way. MAGA supporters defending everything, Democrats attacking everything, maybe 10% in the middle trying to make sense of it all. But that's not what I found. And what I discovered in those 1,200 comments revealed something I think is actually more important than anything Trump said in that speech. Let me break down what I saw because this matters. About 68% of the comments expressed genuine anger, confusion, or disgust. Not the performative outrage we see online, real frustration from people who are clearly hurting. They're talking about their actual grocery bills, their actual gas prices. One person from Pennsylvania wrote about shopping at Aldi, the discount grocery store, and still not being able to afford basic food. Another talked about gas prices jumping 30 cents in a single week. These aren't paid agitators. These are real Americans watching a president tell them their reality doesn't exist. But here's where it gets interesting. About 15% of the comments came from MAGA supporters, and even they sounded confused. Even they seemed to be struggling with the disconnect between what Trump was saying and what they are experiencing. One person wrote, and I am paraphrasing, that they support Trump, but they can understand why he is claiming victory when their bills keep going up. That's not typical MAGA commentary. That's doubt creeping in. And then there's this third group, about 17%, who were just asking questions. Where are the boos the title promised? Why does this look like such a small crowd? Why are the same people always standing behind him at every rally? These are people trying to figure out what's real anymore. You know what really gets me about this? Trump stood there and said, you know why you don't hear the word affordability anymore? Because prices are coming down so much. And I'm sitting here thinking, does he actually believe this? Or does he think we are all stupid enough to believe it? Let me tell you what I think is happening, and I could be wrong about this. But I don't think I am. I think we are watching a president who has completely lost touch with reality, surrounded by people who are either too afraid or too invested to tell him the truth. And what scares me is not just that he is lying. Politicians lie. That's not new. What scares me is the systematic nature of it, the professionally made signs, the same crowd of supporters behind him at every rally, the way he has created this alternate reality where everything is perfect and anyone who disagrees is a paid agitator or a sicko. But here is what nobody is talking about. I went through those comments looking for something specific. I wanted to find Trump supporters who could explain the grocery price thing, who could show me the data that proves prices are down. And you know what I found? Nothing. Not a single person could point to actual evidence. Instead, they just repeated what Trump said, or they attacked the source, or they changed the subject to Biden or Obama. And this is where it gets really disturbing. Because I am not just talking about political disagreement anymore. I am talking about a fundamental break with shared reality. When a president can stand in front of people and tell them that up is down, that their empty wallets are actually full, that their struggles don't exist, and a significant portion of the population just nods along, we've crossed into dangerous territory. Now, I need to address something that came up in about 12% of the comments, and it's important. People were asking, legitimately, whether this video was clickbait. They said they didn't hear much booing or heckling. And you know what? They rewrite. The title promised disruption and chaos, and what we actually saw was a relatively normal Trump rally with a couple of hecklers. That is a fair criticism. But here is what I think is actually more disturbing than booing would have been. The lack of protest, the polite applause, the people sitting there in Iowa in the middle of a farming state that Trump has absolutely destroyed with his tariff policies, and they were clapping. They were laughing at his jokes. They were holding his signs. And I think that says something much darker about where we are as a country than any amount of booing could. Let me explain what I mean. One commenter pointed out that Iowa is a farming state. These are people who lost their markets to China because of Trump's trade war in his first term. And he did it again. He imposed tariffs. Argentina started selling beef to markets that used to buy American, and Iowa farmers are being crushed. But there they are, in that conference room, applauding as Trump tells them everything is great. This is what cult behavior looks like, and I don't use that word lightly. When people will applaud their own economic destruction, when they'll cheer as someone tells them lies about their own lived experience, when they'll attack anyone who points out the contradiction. That's not political disagreement. That's something else entirely. Now, I found something in the comments that I think is crucial, and it comes from people who aren't American. There were comments from Canadians, from Europeans, from Australians, all asking the same basic question. How is this happening? How are Americans watching this and not rioting in the streets? How is this man still in office? And here's what one commenter from Europe wrote that really stuck with me. They said, I am from Europe. Dear Americans, how can you listen to this stupid, idiotic drivel day after day? If he would at least say something with common sense on one topic, but no, he's incapable of that. The world must think Americans are stupid, and you are no longer taken seriously anywhere in the world. That hurt to read. Not because it's mean, but because from the outside looking in, it must seem absolutely insane. A president who slurs his words, who can complete a coherent thought, who lies about basic observable facts, and roughly half the country treats him like he is infallible. What must that look like to the rest of the world? But here, where I want to push back on something because I think it is important. A lot of the comments were focused on Trump supporters, calling them stupid, calling them brainwashed, calling them idiots. And I understand the frustration. I really do. But I think we need to be more precise about what's happening here. The people in that room in Iowa aren't necessarily stupid. Many of them are probably perfectly intelligent in other areas of their lives. What has happened is that they've been systematically lied to, manipulated, and isolated from accurate information for years. They have been told that every source that contradicts Trump is fake news. They've been told that their economic pain is caused by immigrants, by Democrats, by the deep state, by anyone except the people actually making policy decisions that hurt them. This is sophisticated propaganda. This is what authoritarian movements do. They create an alternate information ecosystem where up is down, where evidence doesn't matter, where loyalty is valued over truth. And once people are inside that ecosystem, it's incredibly difficult to reach them with facts, because facts themselves have been delegitimized. I want to read you something that appeared in multiple comments in different forms. People kept saying, release the Epstein files. Over and over again, release the Trumpstein files. And you know what? They absolutely right. The fact that those files haven't been released, the fact that Trump had the power to release them and didn't the fact that this isn't the biggest scandal in American politics tells you everything you need to know about how thoroughly our system has been corrupted. Think about what we know. We know Epstein had connections to Trump. We know there are files. We know Trump could have declassified and released them. We know he didn't and we know that the media barely even talks about it anymore. That's not normal. In a functioning democracy, that would be the story every single day until those files were public. But instead, we are watching Trump stand in Iowa telling people that egg prices are down because he fixed it in 3 days. And you know what the saddest part is? He's probably not even lying intentionally at this point. I think he actually believes his own bullshit. I think he is so surrounded by yes men, so isolated from reality, so deep in his own narcissistic fantasy that he genuinely thinks he has accomplished everything he claims. Let me tell you about a pattern I noticed in the comments. Person after person talked about the people standing behind Trump at his rallies. The same people. Always the same people. And they were asking, how much are these people getting paid? And here's the thing, I don't know if they repaid, but it doesn't really matter. Because whether they repaid in money or paid in the emotional validation of standing close to power, they are performing a role. They re-props in Trumpist reality show presidency. And this is what I think Trump understood better than any politician in modern history. Politics isn't about policy anymore. It's not about facts or evidence or rational argument. It is about performance. It is about creating a narrative and sticking to it no matter what reality says. And as long as you have people willing to play along, willing to hold the signs, willing to cheer on cue, you can say absolutely anything, and a significant portion of the population will believe you. But here is what gives me hope. And maybe I'm wrong to feel hopeful, but I am going to tell you anyway. I saw something in those comments that I haven't seen before. I saw Trump supporters expressing doubt. I saw people who voted for him asking questions. I saw the cult showing cracks. One person wrote about being a Trump supporter who can understand why prices haven't gone down. Another talked about being disappointed that he is still talking about Obama and Biden instead of focusing on the future. These are small cracks. But cracks in a cult are how it begins to fall apart. The challenge is that there's no obvious off-ramp for these people. If you've spent years defending Trump, if you've alienated family members, if you've built your entire identity around supporting him, admitting you were wrong isn't just embarrassing. It's existential. It means you have to confront the fact that you were manipulated, that you were lied to, that you helped enable something dangerous. And I have sympathy for that. I really do. Because the alternative is doubling down, going deeper into the conspiracy theories, becoming more and more detached from reality. And that's what we are seeing with the hardcore MAGA base. They can admit doubt because doubt would shatter everything. Now, let me talk about something Trump said in that speech that I think reveals everything about his psychology. He was talking about a woman who hugged him and got makeup all over his suit, and he said, "I figured I'd get myself in trouble. Not my suit got dirty. Not it was inconvenient." He immediately jumped to, "I'll get in trouble." This is a man who has spent his entire life getting away with things: sexual assault, fraud, tax evasion, betraying allies, inciting insurrection, and yet he lives in constant fear of getting in trouble because deep down, I think he knows. I think he knows he is a fraud. I think he knows that if the house of cards ever falls, if the protection of the presidency and the Republican Party ever disappears, he is facing consequences that terrify him. And that's why he can never stop performing. That's why he can never admit a mistake. That's why he has to keep having rallies where people cheer for him. Keep creating alternate realities where he is the greatest president in history. Because the moment he stops, the moment he allows any doubt to creep in, the whole thing collapses. I want to address something else that came up repeatedly in the comments. People were talking about Trump's speech patterns, the slurring, the strange pauses, the way he seems to lose his train of thought mid-sentence. And multiple people asked, is he wearing dentures that don't fit? Does he have dementia? What's happening? And here's the thing. I am not a doctor. I can diagnose someone from watching videos, but I can tell you what I see. I see a 78-year-old man who is clearly in cognitive decline. I see someone who can complete coherent sentences, who repeats the same stories over and over, who seems confused about basic facts, who has trouble with simple words. Now, is that disqualifying for a president? I think it should be, but here's the hypocrisy that drives me insane. Trump spent years calling Biden Sleepy Joe, mocking his age, questioning his mental fitness. And now Trump is older than Biden was when he took office, clearly showing signs of decline himself, and his supporters don't say a word. This is what I mean by the alternate reality. In MAGA world, Biden was too old and senile to be president. But Trump, who can barely string together a coherent sentence, who falls asleep during meetings, who slurs his words constantly, is sharp as a tack. The cognitive dissonance required to hold both of those beliefs simultaneously is staggering. Let me tell you what I think is going to happen, and this is pure speculation, but it says based on patterns I am seeing. I think we are going to see more rallies like this. Smaller crowds, more obvious lies, more signs of decline. And I think we're going to see the Republican Party face a choice. Do they continue to prop up Trump, knowing he is dragging them down, or do they find a way to move on? And here's my prediction. I think they're going to stick with him because they retrapped. They've spent so long defending the indefensible, excusing the inexcusable, that they can turn back now. They repot committed, as they say in poker. They've put so many chips in the pot that they have to see it through, even though they know they probably going to lose. But there is a bigger question here, and it is one that came up over and over in the comments. How did we get here? How did America end up with a president who lies about basic facts, who shows obvious signs of cognitive decline, who has credible allegations of sexual assault and fraud and treason, and nobody can do anything about it? And I think the answer is complicated. I think it is about decades of right-wing media creating an alternate information ecosystem. I think it is about wealth inequality creating desperation that demagogues can exploit. I think it is about racism and xenophobia that Trump tapped into brilliantly. I think it is about institutional failure, where the mechanisms that are supposed to hold presidents accountable have been systematically weakened. But I also think it is about something simpler. I think it is about people being tired of fighting, tired of caring, tired of being outraged. And I get it. I am tired too. I am exhausted from watching this man lie every single day and face no consequences. I am worn out from the constant chaos and corruption and cruelty. But here is what I keep coming back to. The comments I read weren't from people who had given up. They were angry. They were frustrated, they were demanding action, they wanted to know what they could do, and that tells me something important. Americans haven't given up. Not yet. We re-exhausted. We re-confused about what is real anymore. We re-struggling to afford groceries while a president tells us everything is fine. But we haven't surrendered. So here is what I am going to tell you, and this is where I usually hate when people do this, but I think it is necessary. We have to stop being polite. We have to stop pretending this is normal political disagreement. We have to call this what it is. This is an authoritarian movement using fascist tactics to consolidate power while dismantling democracy. And I know that sounds extreme. I know people will say I am being hysterical. But look at what is happening. A president who lies constantly about basic facts, who calls his opponents enemies of the state, who praises dictators, who threatens to use military force against protesters, who surrounds himself with yes men and fires anyone who tells him no, who claims elections are rigged when he loses, who incites violence and then pardons the violent, who enriches himself and his family through the presidency, who attacks the free press, who undermines institutions, who demands personal loyalty over constitutional duty. That's not conservatism. That's not even typical political corruption. That's authoritarianism. And the fact that it's happening slowly, incompetently, with a leader who is clearly in decline doesn't make it less dangerous. It might actually make it more dangerous because the incompetence makes people think it can really be that bad. But it is that bad, and it's getting worse. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? Now, I want to be clear about something. I am not calling for violence. Violence is exactly what they want. It gives them an excuse to crack down harder, to claim they are the victims, to justify even more authoritarian measures. What I am calling for is sustained, organized, peaceful resistance. That means protests, not just one big march that makes us feel good for a day and then we all go home, but sustained pressure. Every time Trump holds a rally, there should be more protesters outside than supporters inside. Make it impossible for him to pretend he has popular support. That means economic pressure. Find out which companies are supporting this administration and stop giving them your money. Hit them where it hurts. Make it financially painful to support authoritarianism. That means legal pressure. Donate to organizations that are fighting this in court. Support prosecutors who are holding Trump and his allies accountable. Demand that your representatives take action. That means informational warfare. When your MAGA uncle posts lies on Facebook, don't just scroll past. Politely, firmly, with evidence, correct the record. Not because you will change his mind, but because other people are watching. And your silence looks like agreement. That means local action. School boards, city councils, state legislatures, these matter. These are where a lot of the real damage is being done, and they're also where we have the most power to fight back. And most importantly, it means voting in every election, for every office, like our lives depend on it. Because they do. I know that sounds dramatic. And maybe I am wrong. Maybe this will all blow over. Maybe Trump will leave office peacefully when his term ends. Maybe our institutions are stronger than I think they are. Maybe I am being paranoid. But you know what? I'd rather be wrong about the danger than wrong about the complacency. I'd rather sound the alarm too loudly than too quietly. Because if we wait until it's obvious to everyone that democracy is in danger, it might be too late to save it. Let me end with this. I read a comment from someone in Iowa who said they were glad Trump left because the air smells better now. And that made me sad. Not because it's not true, but because it reminded me of something important. Most Americans don't want this. Most Americans aren't at Trump rallies cheering for authoritarianism. Most Americans are just trying to live their lives, feed their families, make ends meet in an economy that's crushing them. And they being told by a president that their struggles aren't real, that everything is fine, that anyone who says otherwise is an enemy, that is gaslighting on a national scale. And it's working on enough people to be dangerous, but it's not working on everyone. And that's what gives me hope. The comments I read weren't from people who had been fooled. They were from people who are wide awake, paying attention, demanding accountability. So here's my call to action. And I am doing this too. I am not just asking you to do something I am not willing to do. I am going to keep making these videos, even though they exhausting, even though they probably want to change anything, even though I am tired. And I am asking you to keep fighting too. Keep calling your representatives. Keep showing up to protests. Keep correcting the lies. Keep supporting the truth. Keep voting. Keep refusing to normalize this. Because the alternative is giving up. The alternative is accepting that this is just how things are now. The alternative is letting them win. And I don't know about you, but I'm not ready to do that yet. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment and let me know what you think. Am I overreacting? Am I not reacting strongly enough? What are you seeing that I am missing? Let us figure this out together. And if this video made you angry or scared or hopeful or determined, share it. Because we need to have these conversations. We need to break through the bubble. We need to reach people who are still reachable. The fight isn't over. Not even close. But we have to actually fight. Polite disagreement isn't going to cut it anymore. We need to be loud. We need to be persistent. We need to be uncompromising in our defense of truth and democracy. I'll see you in the next one. Stay angry, stay hopeful, stay engaged. We're going to get through this. But